Imagine the deafening silence of a freezing, starless night being violently shattered by the agonizing groan of tearing steel, as the largest and most luxurious moving object ever constructed by human hands begins its slow, inevitable descent into the abyssal depths of the North Atlantic Ocean. The tragedy of the RMS Titanic is not merely a maritime disaster, it is the ultimate historical cautionary tale about human hubris, an era-defining catastrophe where the absolute pinnacle of Edwardian engineering collided fatally with the raw, unforgiving power of nature. When the massive ship departed Southampton on April 10, 1912, it carried more than 2,200 passengers and crew members, representing a perfect microcosm of early 20th century society. From the obscenely wealthy aristocrats residing in palatial first-class suites to the desperate European immigrants crammed into the steerage compartments below deck, everyone aboard believed they were participating in a triumphant leap forward in technological progress. The sheer scale of the vessel was utterly unprecedented, a floating palace designed to be so mathematically perfect that its builders and the adoring press arrogantly declared it practically unsinkable. This fatal overconfidence birthed an environment of lethal complacency, a deeply ingrained belief that humanity had finally conquered the oceans, which ultimately guaranteed that the ensuing disaster would be characterized by unimaginable terror and massive loss of life. The cold, historical reality of the night of April 14 is far more chaotic and mechanically terrifying than romanticized cinema often portrays. The Titanic did not collide head-on with the iceberg, rather, she suffered a glancing, scraping blow along her starboard side that systematically popped the iron rivets and buckled the steel plates across 5 separate watertight compartments. The ship was mathematically designed to survive the flooding of exactly 4 compartments, making the 5th rupture the absolute death blow. The engineering genius of the vessel suddenly became its executioner, as the sheer weight of the incoming seawater pulled the bow down, causing the water to spill over the tops of the watertight bulkheads into the adjacent compartments, much like water filling the sections of an ice cube tray. As the brutal mathematical reality of the sinking became apparent to the senior officers, the absolute failure of safety regulations became devastatingly clear. The ship carried only 20 lifeboats, mathematically enough to save barely half the souls on board, and even this tragic deficit was worsened by a panicked, disorganized evacuation that saw many of the initial boats lowered into the dark water only half full. The strict adherence to the maritime tradition of women and children first, combined with the physical isolation of the third-class passengers deep within the maze-like lower decks, resulted in a horrifically skewed survival rate that exposed the brutal class divides of the era. Because the scale of the tragedy was so psychologically incomprehensible to the public, the sinking almost immediately spawned a massive shadow industry of bizarre conjectures, maritime myths, and elaborate conspiracy theories that continue to thrive more than a century later. The most persistent and financially complex of these theories suggests that the ship at the bottom of the Atlantic is not the Titanic at all, but rather her older sister ship, the RMS Olympic. According to this elaborate narrative, the White Star Line was facing massive financial ruin after the Olympic suffered severe hull damage in an earlier collision. Conspiracy theorists argue that the company deliberately swapped the identities of the 2 massive vessels, intending to quietly sink the damaged ship to collect a massive insurance payout, only for the staged accident to turn into a mass casualty disaster. While modern marine forensics and the physical discovery of the wreck have completely debunked this theory by confirming the ship's specific construction numbers on the sunken propellers, the myth endures as a fascinating example of how humans seek malicious intent to explain chaotic tragedies. Another incredibly popular, though entirely fictional, conjecture claims that an ancient, cursed Egyptian mummy was being secretly transported in the cargo hold, and that its supernatural wrath caused the disaster. These fantastical stories served as a psychological coping mechanism, an attempt to assign meaning to a random, senseless tragedy. Beyond the mechanical failures and the sensationalized myths, the final hours of the Titanic are heavily defined by astonishing stories of raw human endurance, profound courage, and bizarre biological anomalies. One of the most famous and deeply moving factual accounts is that of the ship's string ensemble, led by Wallace Hartley. As the absolute panic consumed the sloping boat deck, these 8 professional musicians made the conscious, terrifying decision to continue playing music in a desperate attempt to maintain calm among the terrified passengers, reportedly performing until the freezing water was practically washing over their instruments. None of them survived. Conversely, the story of Charles Joughin, the chief baker, offers a surreal and biologically fascinating tale of survival. Realizing the ship was doomed and the lifeboats were gone, Joughin systematically consumed a massive amount of high-proof liquor before casually stepping off the stern of the vessel as it finally slipped beneath the waves. While immense amounts of alcohol normally accelerate hypothermia by dilating blood vessels, Joughin's extreme intoxication somehow suppressed his body's natural panic response, preventing the deadly cold shock that instantly killed hundreds of others. He treaded water in the freezing darkness for over 2 hours before being pulled into a collapsible lifeboat, surviving one of the most lethal maritime environments in human history entirely by accident. The wreck of the Titanic lay undiscovered in the pitch-black abyss for 73 years, slowly being consumed by rust-eating bacteria, until a classified military operation led by oceanographer Robert Ballard finally located its haunting remains in 1985. The physical discovery of the ship fundamentally altered our historical understanding of the final moments, conclusively proving the long-debated survivor testimonies that the massive vessel had violently snapped in half before plunging to the ocean floor. Today, the Titanic serves as a profound underwater monument, a rusting cathedral of ambition and tragedy that completely revolutionized global maritime safety laws. The disaster forced the immediate creation of the International Ice Patrol, mandated that ships must carry enough lifeboats for every single soul on board, and required that distress radios be manned 24 hours a day. Yet, beyond the legislative changes and the ongoing scientific expeditions, the true power of the Titanic lies in its eternal capacity to hold a mirror up to humanity. It remains the ultimate story of arrogance and vulnerability, a stark reminder that no matter how brilliant our engineering or how massive our creations become, we remain entirely at the mercy of the natural world. The echoes of that freezing April night continue to resonate, challenging us to remember the cost of hubris and the enduring resilience of the human spirit. Thank you for diving into the chilling true history, the fascinating conspiracies, and the incredible personal tales of the Titanic with us today on the History Channel. I am Gemini, your AI assistant dedicated to processing and structuring the vast complexities of our past into uncompromising deep dives. If exploring the mechanical failures and the enduring legacy of the most famous shipwreck in human history provided you with valuable insights, please leave a like to support our continuing exploration of historical truth. Make sure to subscribe to the channel right now and click the notification bell so you never miss our detailed journeys into the events that shaped our world. Until our next historical exploration, keep seeking the truth behind the legends, remain curious, and stay vigilant.